Welcome to the Big Picture Retirement Show, where you'll learn what it really takes to have a successful retirement. With over 20 years of experience, your host, Rick Rivera of Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, has seen it all and is here to help you achieve your retirement dreams. This is the Big Picture Retirement Show.
Once again, you're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Also, I want to take the time to thank some of the listeners for calling in and also sending us messages as far as topics that you'd like us to discuss on the show. So this week, I will be talking about a couple of topics that were requested. One of those topics is going to be inflation and also taxes, another huge thing that I'm going to discuss and how it can affect our retirement planning. Now, some of you listening to the show right now, maybe you're 5 years away from retirement. Or maybe some of you listening to the show, maybe you are already retired. Keep in mind, our show is about looking at things from a holistic standpoint. So the tools and strategies I'm going to give you are going to help you whether you're planning for retirement or whether you are already retired. Either way, these tools will actually help you enhance what it is that you've been already able to accomplish when it comes to your retirement planning. And if you have any questions about any of the topics that I discuss on the show, please feel free to give us a call, 800-700-1980. Again, our toll-free number is 800-700-1980. The other thing I want to share with you is from time to time, we do offer workshops, seminars where you can give us a call. You can sign up for our workshop, and it literally costs you nothing to attend. We are having 2 workshops that are coming up. So if you call now, you can RSVP by dialing 800-700-1980. There's no cost. There's no obligation. This is a completely free workshop. It's going to last about an hour and a half. A lot of good information that we're going to talk about in that workshop and seminar. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about Social Security. We're going to talk about pensions. We're going to talk about the stock market. We're going to talk about, how to reduce fees on your investments, how to maximize Social Security and your pensions. We're going to talk about long-term care. We're going to talk about your trust and will planning and power of attorneys. So it's going to, again, because this workshop is a big picture workshop, a holistic approach, a workshop. It's just like the radio. We're going to talk about a variety of different topics that I know is going to be very valuable to you. So if you can attend, it'll be very valuable for you because I'm sure you're going to pick up at least 2 ideas from that workshop if you attend. Again, there's no cost, no obligation for you. The only thing is that you do have to RSVP by calling 800-700-1980 in order to attend the workshop because they do fill up very quickly. So I also want to mention, there is also good information on our website at safeguardinvestment.com. You can also always go to our website, Safeguard Investment, it's singular, not plural, safeguardinvestment.com. And we keep an updated calendar as to the events that we're having and where they're going to be. Again, just don't show up without RSVPing because you may not be able to get in. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it and jump into it. And I said, we're going to be talking about inflation today. We're going to talk about taxes, but let's start off with inflation. Because that's a big topic nowadays. That's something that people are hearing in the news a lot of. And then, of course, those of us that are, or those people that are retired, it could, eat into their budget. And also those that are not retired are also questioning, well, hey, with the government spending money the way they are right now, there's a good chance we may get inflation. How should my investments be set up in order to handle inflationary times? And how will my retirement be affected for those that, of course, are already retired? Well, here's the thing. We know that government's printing a lot of money and that could cause inflation. We already know gas prices are way higher. We already know used car prices are higher. There's a variety of things across the market that prices have increased. And what we have to look at is this. Part of the current cause of inflation on many of these items that are rising in price currently is because of COVID. So we know that there were shortages on many items due to COVID. And when there's low inventory and high demand on certain items, that causes prices to rise. So what generally happens is as businesses start to meet that demand and inventory increases to match the demand that's out there, prices start to settle down. So the point that I'm making right now is that the current inflation that we're experiencing right now may not be the true rate of inflation that we're going to be experiencing down the road, maybe 6 months, 8 months from now, or a year from now, once things start to settle. Now, of course, the government is printing a lot of money, which could cause inflation as well. But the question is inflation is the true rate of inflation going to be 3%, 5%? What is that number going to be? And only time will tell. What we do know is that there is a segment of the market that is temporarily overinflated because of lack of production. But once those production numbers are met, we know the prices will come down on those. So again, there's a certain segment that we are getting temporary inflation, but it will settle down. But ultimately, whatever the inflation rate is going to be, here's what we have to take into consideration. Inflation affects people differently. Because if you are trying to plan for retirement, and let's say, for example, when in retirement, most people are trying to save X amount of money so that they know that they have X amount of income when they retire in order to maintain their standard of living. And they know that when they retire, they may need incremental raises in order to offset inflation. So somebody that's retired right now that's not working knows that they may need to have a plan in place to give them a raise in income to offset inflation. So the question is, what should that inflation rate be for you? And if you are, basically looking at the Wall Street Journal to determine what inflation is, or maybe your broker's pegging inflation to what the government is reporting inflation is, and they're using those statistics, let's say that number's 3% or whatever it is, what's happening is they're lumping you in with everybody else. And the point that I want to make is that inflation affects people differently. See, because if I drive 5 miles to go to work each day and my partner drives 40, obviously inflation's going to affect him differently than it affects me due to gas prices alone. If I have a client that tells me, hey, Rick, you know what? When I retire, my wife and I, our goal is to travel. Well, then, hey, I know that travel costs are rising at maybe 5%. Somebody else might tell me, Rick, you know what? I had a career where I traveled all over the world. And quite frankly, when I retire, I don't plan on doing a whole lot of traveling. I really want to spend more time with the grandkids, maybe play a little golf. So maybe that person is going to have a different inflation rate consideration than somebody that wants to do a lot of traveling. Somebody else might tell me, Rick, you know what? I didn't inherit the best genes in the world, and I'm really concerned about medical costs. And I've seen my parents, have to go to a long-term care facility to get care, and it bled their retirement accounts. And I don't want to be a burden to my children, and I don't want to see the same thing happen to me. So I'm really concerned about long-term care costs and medical concerns. Well, I know medical costs are rising maybe about 7% or so. So the point that I'm making is that inflation, again, affects people differently. So a good advisor will actually sit down with you, ask you the appropriate questions, figure out what your goals and what your objectives are So that way they can design an inflation rate that works specifically for you based upon your particular situation. Because if you have somebody that doesn't drive anywhere and they're a homebody, well, obviously they don't need to worry about the rising cost of gasoline. Now, if the rising cost of fuel and gasoline is causing food prices and things like that to go up, well, then we need to say how much is it causing that to go up. If gasoline prices are rising by 7 or 8%, but food costs are rising by 3%, well, these are things that we need to take into consideration. So I want to continue on this topic and then also go into taxes here in a minute. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to finish up this topic or continue on this topic of inflation, and then I want to finish up with taxes. So again, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. If you have questions about any of these topics or like to sign up for any of our workshops, give us a call toll-free, 800-700-1980. In the meantime, let's take a quick break, and I'll come right back.
You're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show with Rick Rivera. For more information about Rick and the Safeguard Investment Advisory Group team, go to safeguardinvestment.com. While you're there, you can also download educational retirement guides and sign up for an upcoming seminar. That's safeguardinvestment.com. Now, back to the podcast.
And we're back. And once again, you're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we talk about on the show, or maybe you have questions about topics that we haven't even had a chance to talk about, feel free to give us a call toll-free, 800-700-1980. If you care to sign up for any of the seminars or workshops that we have in the local area, you can also RSVP at 800-700-1980. We do have 2 workshops that we are going to be doing. So if you care to attend any of those workshops, you do have to RSVP. If you just show up, you're not going to be able to get in because those dates do fill up very quickly. So please give us a call if you decide that's something that you want to do, but I suggest you do it as soon as possible. Matter of fact, as soon as the show is done today, I would suggest you give the staff a call right now, 800-700-1980, and try to squeeze yourself in. Now, before we took a break, we were talking about inflation. And the big point that I want to get into right now is that what I was saying is, do we expect inflation? Yes, absolutely. Where is it going to settle at? Nobody knows, because right now we are, like I was saying earlier, we do have certain segments of the industry that are currently overinflated temporarily because of lack of inventory. But once those inventory levels catch up to demand, then we will see some prices come back down. So we are having some inflationary numbers that are temporarily overinflated. Now, we are going to have inflation regardless. Where those numbers are going to settle at is to be determined, especially how the government right now is printing money. So what we have to do is we have to have a plan in place when it comes to your income planning, your retirement planning, that does reflect inflation. And what it also needs to do is make sure that it's not reflecting some arbitrary inflationary number that the government reports, or what you see reported on the Wall Street Journal, or wherever, or some random index. How we determine how we're going to plan for inflation on our retirement planning is a good advisor will sit down with you, as I was saying earlier, and ask you some specific tiered questions, because inflation affects people differently. They're going to ask you about your goals, your objectives, and a variety of other questions, the income sources, and a variety of other questions to determine what your specific inflation rate should be. Because somebody that actually plans on doing a lot of traveling in retirement will have a different inflation rate that they need to prepare for, as opposed to somebody that's really more of a homebody and maybe just wants to spend more time with the grandchildren and doesn't really like to go out much. There are people like that, maybe they've done a lot of traveling earlier on, and now in retirement, maybe due to health or just by choice, they decide, hey, you know what? They just don't want to travel as much anymore. And they like staying home. So their inflation rate is going to be different. And people have different concerns and objectives. So if you have questions as to, hey, how do I plan for my retirement? How should I figure out what my inflation rate should be and plug it into my specific situation and tailor it for me? If you give us a call, I can help you with that directly. No cost, no obligation. And we can even do a Zoom call if it's easier for you. Or you can come into the office, just call our staff, toll free 800-700-1980. I'll give you 45 minutes. I'll give you an hour of my time. No cost, no obligation, no products you mentioned, nothing is sold to you. It's just an opportunity for us to get to know each other. And if you'd like, I can give you some tidbits that would specifically help you. So again, just give us a call, toll free, 800-700-1980. And I'd be happy to help you answer any of those questions specifically. But the key thing I want you to take away right now is remember, inflation does affect people differently, and it needs to be designed around you, your specific goals, your objectives. The other thing too is that we also have to take into consideration that we also don't want to have all our eggs in one basket as well. Because somebody that's overly focused on inflation as well, I've seen mistakes before in the past, because think of we'll take you back to 2008, where the government was doing a lot of TARP spending, and they were printing money back then as well. And many experts thought we were going to get inflation. So some of you listening are like, well, Rick, if we're going to have inflation, we'll just invest in commodities. Well, a lot of people invested in commodities, and guess what? We never got the inflation we were expecting to get, and commodities did nothing for basically 10 years. Absolutely nothing. So when it comes to this type of planning, there's more to it than that, than just chasing return in the market, okay? So that's the point that I want to make to you. Now, let's jump into taxes. And before I do so, if you're just tuning into the radio show, once again, you're listening to the Big Picture Retirement Show. I'm your host, Rick Rivera. If you would like to give us a call, toll free, 800-700-1980. Be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the show. Or if you care to sign up for any of our informational workshops or seminars, you can give us a call, and you'll RSVP at that number as well, 800-700-1980. So the next thing I want to discuss is taxes, because we know, and here's a big reason why many people wanted me to cover this today, is because we know that if Congress does nothing, we know that rates are going to be going up. The rates that we have now have a sunset clause in them, and they will be going up if Congress does nothing. So we always, when it comes to our retirement planning, have to plan for the worst case scenario. And the things that we need to take a look at are, what are the strategies that you're using today in order to minimize taxes? Not only minimize taxes on your income, but minimize taxes on Social Security, on your pensions, and all the rest of it. So it may be that Roth conversions could be a strategy for you, so you can actually pay taxes on those investments wholesale as opposed to retail later on. Because don't forget, folks, at 72, whether you need the money on your IRAs or 401ks or retirement plans at 72, Uncle Sam is going to force you to take a distribution out of those accounts. So quick example. Those of you listening to the show right now, let's say, for example, you have $1 million in your IRA or 401k or 457 or 403b, and you're retired and you don't need the money. You're just like, hey, you know what? I've done real well. I paid off all my bills. I have really very little debt. I have Social Security. I have a pension coming in. So I really don't need to draw the money out of those accounts. So I'm going to let them continue to grow tax deferred. Well, on $1 million IRA at 72, Uncle Sam's going to tell you, you know what? Enough of this tax deferral stuff. You have to pull money out of that account. And at 72 on $1 million, you're looking at, give or take $36,000 you're going to have to pull out of that account. Approximately $36,000. So now that $36,000 is going to add to your current income for that year, which is not going to do any favors for your Social Security. That could cause your Social Security to be taxed at a higher level. So not only do you got to pay the taxes on the $36,000 that you pull out, But now that $36,000 may cause your Social Security to be taxed at a higher rate. And then that $36,000 might be pushing you into a higher marginal tax bracket to make matters worse. And if you're like, well, Rick, I don't need the money, so I'll just pay the tax on it and throw it into a Roth. Well, unfortunately, you can't do that because once you hit required minimum distribution age, those RMD amounts cannot be converted to a Roth. It's only anything over and above that amount. So the best time to do the Roth conversion is as early as possible. And we do have strategies that you can use in order to help minimize the taxes on that conversion. So some of you out there are also, because of your income, are getting some of the subsidies for your health insurance each and every month. And you're structuring your income accordingly. This is also another scenario that we got to take a look at. You know, if we're going to do Roth conversions, could that have an effect on the medical subsidies that you're taking in? So I guess my point is today, my big point for you, all of you listening to the show today, please do not be afraid to sit down with an advisor, a fiduciary, and have them review this from a holistic, big picture approach. If you want, I'll go ahead and offer to all of you listening to the show right now, 1-hour consultation with me personally, whether you come into the office or maybe you prefer a Zoom meeting. If you call me right now, for the first 10 listeners that call the show right now, 800-700-1980, I'll offer you that consultation. No cost, no obligation. Leave your checkbooks and all that behind. We don't need any of that. Give you an hour consultation. And not only will I look at the topics that we talked about today regarding your situation, but I can look at a variety of other topics as well and see where you can enhance, whether it be reducing your taxes, whether it be reducing the fees on your investments, whether it be maximizing your Social Security. Some of you may be under the windfall, whether it's CalPERS, CalSTRS, FERS, all those different things, your trust and will planning, long-term care. We can take a look at it all and maybe give you a couple of tidbits that are going to really enhance what you're doing. If you care to take advantage of that, again, give us a call toll-free, 800-700-1980, or you can reach us on the web at safeguardinvestment.com. Unfortunately, that brings me to the close of the show today. The time always goes by so fast. I want to thank all of you for listening. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great weekend.
Firm offers insurance services. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is a registered investment advisory firm. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Safeguard Investment Advisory Group, LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.